Hey, this is Step Amit. Welcome to my Exorcism.io series. In this video, I'll be working through the atbash cipher exercise from the Exorcism.io Ruby track. So it's another cipher exercise today. Let's see, this one, an ancient encryption system created in the Middle East. And this is a substitution cipher where basically you reverse the alphabet, and those pairs up and down, those are your substitutions. So A becomes Z, B becomes Y, C becomes X. And then you write it out in groups of 5 in this case. You remove punctuation, and you remove spaces. So you and then you decode it the same way, right? It's the same combination. And I think in this case, there are going to be numbers as well, and numbers should pass through, although we will remove punctuation. So let me go ahead and grab this and pull it down. And this rake file, if you've never seen it before, it just allows me to run my tests by typing rake. And so I pull that in. Let me start a new tmux session. And open up the test file. All right, let me see what I'm looking at here. Okay, so we're gonna have we're gonna be pulling in a class called atbash that needs to be defined in a file named atbashcipher.rb, which I deleted the default one a second ago so I could start over clean. And it's going to have a class level method encode that accepts plain text and will return the encoded text, the cipher text. And it will also have a decode method that will do the opposite. Okay, I'm just going to let these tests guide me. Let me open up a test running pane down here and run. And of course, we saw the error a second ago that the file doesn't exist, so I'll go ahead and create that. And swap the panes. I like to have my tests on the right and my class under test on the left. Now it'll complain because I haven't created the atbash class. I haven't initialized that yet, so let's do that. And next it'll complain that we don't have an encode class level method. So I will go ahead and add that. Let's see. It's a class method. So this is how I define them. You know, there's different ways you could do this. You can define a class method in Ruby by self.encode, or you could give the class name, which is not that, atbash.encode. I like to open up this little guy so that I can just define them all by name in here. Encode. And so I'm being a little strict here about my TDD. It's going to complain that I'm not accepting any arguments in my encode method. Wrong number of arguments given, so let me just accept it. Plain text. And I'm returning nil instead of the text that it expects. So let me just go ahead and hard code the response, BBH, and go on to the next test and let this error prompt me to actually implement this. So I think I need to go ahead and do kind of a basic, the first version of the whole thing. That right now all it's going to do is reverse the letters. And so I want in this case, this type of case where I've got one set of input that I need to translate into another set of input, I always think of like a dictionary-like structure there. So here in Ruby, I think of a hash. That if I break this string that I'm given, which is yes. If I break that apart into an array of its characters and then translate each of those against a hash. So for instance, using by mapping it to to the hash, then I can translate it. But in order to have that, I'll need a hash that has the letters of the alphabet as the keys, and the reverse letters of the alphabet as the values. And I could write that out, and I think in the end I might do that because it's more explicit. To get going here a little more quickly, because it's a little tedious to write all that out, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a range or a set of ranges here to produce what I want. So I'll just show you what I'm thinking. If I create a range from A to Z here and turn that into an array, let's see. And then I zip that together with another range, A to Z, but reversed. Wait, 2A, reverse. That's going to give me a two-dimensional array, and it's gonna look something like this. Forget about the quotes there. It'll look something like A, Z, B, Y, something like that. And then 2H, if I call 2H on that, it's gonna turn that into the hash that we want. So now what I can do, of course I need to save this. Let me call this translation or translations. And what I can do now simply is take the plain text I've been given, get an array of its chars, its characters, and then map those to using this shortcut syntax where I use a unary ampersand to let me just type this out. Hang on. Translations. If you give a unary ampersand a hash, it will convert that hash into a proc it'll call toproc on your hash. And toproc on a hash will return a proc that accepts an input and then looks up the value in the hash by the key that input represents. So if I map my array of chars here to that, then it's gonna convert it to the values from this hash, which should be what we need. And then I want to join that back together. And that should, unless I've done something wrong, that should be enough to get both of those first tests passing. Yep. Okay. Hopefully that explanation wasn't too confusing. In another video somewhere, I explain that that unary ampersand with a hash. But if you want more information about it, just look up in the rubydoc.org documentation for hash. Look at the toproc method, because that's what this unary ampersand character is calling on whatever you give it. All right, let's continue on. This is going to fail now because I'm not doing any down casing of my input, and that's something that we need to do apparently according to this test. So let me go ahead and downcase this. All right, cool. Will this fail? Let's see. I'm not sure what's going to happen with those spaces. I think that might just work. That's kind of interesting. I'm not really sure why or where. Because here I'm going to have spaces in that array. Let's see. So you can see here, there are actually spaces there. And then when I map that, what's going to happen? What are those spaces going to become? Just nil, I think. Those will be nil. And so that's why they will be, yeah. Oh, so they're gone. They're not even there. So nothing gets returned for those because they're not found in the translations hash. And so they're just not even there. Well, that's handy. Okay, this will fail because we're not splitting this up into groups of 5. So what I want to do here is I want to break this apart into each slice of size 5. And let me just show you what that does. That actually is on enumeration, so it returns an enumerator. So here I need to call 2a on it to show you that it will group your array into a set of an arrays. See right there, it's a, if you look at in the red up here where this has failed, it is groups of 5 letters. See, it groups it that way. And so what I want to do with that is map that to join, because what I want to join just like that with no separator is each of those internal groups of 5. And then I want to join this whole thing, but I want to space in between each group. So this is going to work. All right, keep going. Okay, next, this is going to fail because we don't have numbers in our translations hash. And so this is going to blow up. Yeah, see, it removes the numbers because they're not found in our translations hash, but we want them there. So what we can do, I'm just going to keep building up this thing here. It's going to be, this will be a little bit ugly, but I'm going to merge this with a hash that I create here out of, let's see, this is going to be 0 to 9. Notice that these are strings because I'm dealing with chars and not actual numbers, not actual digits, to A. And I'm going to zip it to the exact same thing. And don't worry, I'm going to clean all this up before we're done. I'm going to refactor this to A. To H. See if I did that right. I might need parentheses around that call. Or I don't. Oh, wait. I need parentheses right here. Well, that's interesting. So let me output translations. Tell you what, I'm gonna pry right here. So let me look at our hash here. All right, yeah, that'll looks good. So let me look at this again. I want to play lines 8 through 11 and just see what I wind up with. Oh, wait. Lines 8 through 11. I'm on the wrong test. Continue. There we go. This is the one I want to see. I want to see, there's my chars with my 1, my 2, and my 3. Oh, and there are spaces there. I see. Okay, so if I now play lines 8 through 11, which is going to take me up through the mapping to the translations. Okay, I see I've got some nils in there that are actually, they're actually in this array. Let me look at this code again. And so that's the problem, because when I slice this up, let's try that again. Hang on. Plain text, downcase, chars, map, translations, each slice 5. And let's just see what that looks like as an array. Oh, yeah. Okay, there's a problem right there. So what I actually need to do, okay, I need to do one more set of normalization here on the way in. I want to G-sub any, let's see, non-word characters with nothing. I think that's what I want to do. Because we're supposed to get rid of punctuation and spaces. There we go. All right, keep going. Encode deep thought. Truth is fiction. All right. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This will test all letters. All right, cool. So now we need to test decode exorcism. So this is, of course, is first going to fail because we don't have a decode method. Yep. So let's go ahead and create decode to take ciphertext. And this is going to be almost exactly like encode. In fact, I'm just going to copy everything from here and just modify it. Because what's different about decoding is that we don't group it together. We don't do that when we simply join it. There's no groups to join. We simply join it. Of course, I don't have plain text here. I have ciphertext. Yep. That's it. So I think this will just work. And I think, I feel like all these tests are going to pass. And all I'm left with is some refactoring. I don't even read the test half the time. I literally let the test failures guide me. Now, if I were writing this code from scratch, I would be writing these tests as well. And I would just write them one at a time. I might, if I know kind of the general behavior I want, I might put in empty tests. I might put in just the names of the different things that I know that it needs to do. But I'm going to fill them out one at a time. I'm going to write the test one at a time. And that was it. That was our last test. I'm going to write them out one at a time, and I'm going to implement that behavior until I've got all the functionality that I want. And then I'm going to step back and I'm going to refactor it. Okay, so the first thing I see here, I mean, there's a lot of duplication. I'm going to take translations out of here, and I'm going to put it into a constant in the class. Let's just do that. And then I'm actually going to make it, I think I'm going to make it a little more explicit. So a constant will be all uppercase. So I can get rid of these two lines. And then this is so confusing looking to me. I mean, I see what it does, but if I'm coming in looking at this later, I'm not going to be able to untangle what this is. I mean, it's going to be really hard to untangle this. And the bulk of writing good code is making our code maintainable, which means a big part of that is making it easy to understand. I don't want to stub my toe when I come in here. I don't want to have to untangle things. I want to save the hard thinking for the hard problems and not for stuff that should be easy. I want to be able to look at translations and know exactly what's going on without putting in too much effort. So what I think I'm going to do here is I think I'm actually going to replace it. Let me do this on another line right here with the actual value of that. And so the way I'm going to do that is simply, I'm going to read Ruby R atbash. I'm going to require atbash cipher, and I'm going to execute put s atbash translations. And so I should be able to get that written right there. There we go. Well, hang on. I overwrote. There. Let me clean this up a little bit. So the reason I'm doing this is because usually it's better to be explicit than it is to be clever. Clever was okay there because I didn't want to have to type all this out, but I don't want to leave it that way. I want it to be easy to understand. I want to be kind to the next developer, who is probably me in 6 months when I've forgotten all the context I have in my head right now. So let me just go, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put this in groups of 5, and I bet that will be an even number of groups, or pretty close to it. Right? Isn't that right? It's 26 letters plus 10. Well, wait a minute. Might have one more number that I need. It's okay. I'll let that hang off there. So let's just make sure this still works. I didn't break anything by doing that. All right. In order to get the rest of this duplication out of here, I think I'm going to have to create an instance of my class. I think that'll be the simplest way to do it so that I'm not passing variables around all over the place. So what that would look like here for decode is I would call new with my ciphertext. And then call decode on it. And then I would have a method, an instance level method, decode. Let me call this input. And then create an adder reader for my input. And then I need to define my initialize method to take input and set that instance variable. That should work. Okay, let me do the same here. For encode, it's going to be new plain text encode. And then I'll simply first take those contents and move them to the class level method encode. Now, you look at this, and that's no great improvement over what we had. All I've done is introduce the additional work of instantiating a class. But because I've done this, now I can start pulling out some of these other pieces of duplication. Because as you can see, these two methods are identical from here to here. It is the only thing that differentiates decode from encode is what happens after we've translated this method. So I'm going to create a method called translation. It's going to be private. And translation is simply going to take our input, downcase it, remove all non-word characters, get the chars, and map that to the hash. And so now I can use that to simply replace the first several lines of decode as well. So now decode, look how simple decode is. Decode means to just take your translation and join those arrays, those characters together. Encode is a little bit more work. It gets them into groups, maps them, and joins them. Now, I could do a little bit more work here. First of all, I see that the work that I'm doing here on these first 3 lines is really the work of normalization. This is something I would normally do, no pun intended, when on the way in to the class. So I'm not going to need that there at all. In my initialize method, I simply want to normalize my input because my initialize method has no business really knowing the details of what that means for it to be normalized. Translation has no business knowing those details either. Really, this is normalization. What does that mean? Well, I downcase it and I remove non-word characters. All right, cool. So now translation is simply you take the input, get the chars, and you map them against the translations. That's pretty simple. That's pretty clear. I think that's what it needs to be. The only thing that looks a little complicated to me now is encode. And let me just think about this for a second. I have a magic number here that I can call, let me call this cipher group size. That's 5. Okay, anything else about the encode method that I want to change? I take the translation, I slice it. I could call this, translation groups. Man, this is where it gets tricky, is coming up with names for these things. So, because I really do look at this encode method and see that it's doing several things. It's grouping it's slicing up the translation into the different groups, and then it's joining each of those groups together, and then it's joining the whole thing together. I think I'm going to call this whole group there cipher groups. Just like that. And simply paste those contents in here. Try that again. So decode means to take the translation and join it. Encode means to take the cipher groups and join them with a space in between. What are the cipher groups? Well, you take the translation, you slice it according to the cipher group size and map. You join each group. I think that's fair. I think that's what I want it to be. So let me go ahead and submit this. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.